My 7-year-old daughter stood at the center of a bustling room, her sparkly gold dress shimmering under the soft lights. In her tiny hand, she clutched a small gift box, its weight heavy with unspoken words. Laughter and clinking glasses filled the air, but she was an island of stillness amidst the chaos. I watched her closely, my heart racing. With unwavering eyes, she turned to her grandmother and lifted the box slightly. "Grandma, Dad told me to give this to you if you ever ignored me again." In that moment, everything froze. Forks hung mid-air, conversations halted, and the music faded into a haunting silence. Her grandmother, my husband's mother, wore a tight, confused smile as if she thought it was a joke. But when she opened the box, laughter turned to horror. A scream erupted, a raw, guttural sound that pierced through the room, louder than the Christmas carols, louder than the gasps that followed. People rushed over, curiosity etched on their faces, but I already knew what was inside. My husband had packed that box months ago, a ticking time bomb for the day his mother crossed the line. That day was today. Let me take you back. Let me show you how my daughter became invisible in a room full of gifts, how that small box shattered the facade of smiles that had held this family together for years. When I married Travis, I believed I was stepping into a big, loving family. They were loud, close-knit, always planning cookouts, game nights, and holiday gatherings. His mother, Helen Foster, was the heart of it all. Her voice could silence a room, and her opinions were as strong as her presence. I admired her strength and desperately wanted her approval. At first, she seemed to embrace me. She smiled during dinners, praised my cooking, and hugged me tightly when we said goodbye. But soon, I sensed a shift. Subtle at first, she began to forget me in family group texts. Her comments about how different I was from the women in their family stung. "You didn't grow up with the same values," she would say, her tone dripping with condescension. It was always just enough to make me question my place in this family. Was it all in my head? The tension simmered beneath the surface, a quiet storm brewing, waiting for the right moment to unleash its fury. The warm glow of late afternoon sunlight filters softly through the window, casting gentle patterns on Samantha Carter's face as she sits cross-legged on the carpet. The smell of fresh baked cookies drifts through the house, mingling with the faint sound of her mother humming softly nearby. Outside, laughter from a family gathering rises and falls like a distant tide, a reminder of everything she hopes to protect. But then her eyes drift to Helen Foster, her distant, watchful gaze, her hands clutching a small discarded gift meant for Samantha. A wave of confusion crosses her innocent face. Does she think I'm enough? Am I loved at all? A silent ache settles deep inside her, hopeful yet wary. Can she find acceptance amid the quiet hostility? The memory flickers, her tiny hand reaching out for her mother, only to notice Helen Foster's cold stare and the unspoken rejection. That moment seeds her vulnerability, stirring a quiet strength. She wants to believe in love. She wants family to feel safe. But what happens when the ones meant to protect you seem to hold you at arm's length? As shadows lengthen, Samantha's story becomes an unspoken battle between hope and exclusion, between innocence and the subtle, unyielding grip of tradition. And yet, deep inside, a flicker of hope remains, merely waiting for the right moment to bloom. The air was heavy with unspoken words as I stepped into Helen Foster's house. The Christmas lights flickered softly, casting long, shifting shadows on the walls, but it wasn't the holiday glow that made my nerves tighten. It was the cold, calculating look in Helen Foster's eyes. Her gaze felt sharp, like she was sizing me up, weighing me as a threat. I could feel the silence thickening, a silent storm just about to explode. Would I finally speak up? Or would I keep my mouth shut? Armor against the tides of her judgment. My heart pounded quietly, every breath heavy with tension. Her veneer of politeness seemed fragile, like one wrong move might shatter the holiday cheer. Every detail, the faint rustle of wrapping paper, the scent of pine and cinnamon, the distant laughter, faded into the background, replaced by the rising panic of what's to come. I knew this was the moment I had to decide, stand my ground or retreat into silence. The question hung in the air. Would this Christmas finally break me? Or could I find the strength to hold on, to hope, and to my family? In that suspended breath, I asked myself, what if everything changes today? The tension lingers, but I can't avoid what's coming much longer. The room felt like it was holding its breath. Samantha Carter stepped inside, her tiny hands clutching a handmade gift, her eyes wide with a mix of hope and innocence. Her curls bounced with every careful step, wearing the gold dress she'd picked herself, proud of her small achievement. She clutched a small wrapped wooden box she'd painted in art class, a trinket for Helen Foster, decorated with glittered letters spelling Grandma. She wanted her to see how much she cared, but Helen Foster barely looked her way. Instead, she greeted Maddie and Jonah with exaggerated warmth, laughing, complimenting, handing Maddie a velvet pouch with a wink that felt more like a silent dismiss. Helen Foster's eyes flicked over Zia's gift, took it without a word, and casually set it aside like a paper napkin. Zia's gaze dropped, hope flickering. She didn't say a word, only looked at me for reassurance before settling on the couch, trying to disappear into herself. The tension in the air was thick, silent yet deafening. The lights from the Christmas tree flickered softly, contrasting the coldness here. After dinner, Helen Foster took center stage, distributing gifts with a dramatic flourish. Jonah's face lit up as cash slid into his hands. Maddie's eyes sparkled as she tore open her iPad, pulling Helen Foster into a tight hug. Then, finally, Helen Foster called Zia's name. She hesitated, then quietly moved forward, clutching the small gift bag. Inside, a lavender candle in a simple glass jar, with a tag reading, "To Travis's Girl," was all she received. No sparkle, no big reveal, just a quiet reminder of feeling left out. My heart clenched as I watched her. What would happen next? Would she let Helen Foster's silence break her spirit? Or was this the moment she'd find her voice? The room's silence hung heavy, and every second felt like the calm before a storm. The room felt suffocating, like the walls were closing in. Zia sat quietly, the flickering candle in her lap, her tiny fingers trembling slightly. She didn't cry, didn't frown, but I saw it. The slow withdrawal, the quiet pull into herself. It was the kind of silence that stays with a child long after the world has moved on. Helen Foster was oblivious. She handed out more gifts, more praise for everyone else. Maddie's eyes lit up as she tore into her shiny new iPad. Jonah was grinning, cash in hand, his excitement too loud for anyone to notice the quiet devastation sitting next to me. I couldn't take my eyes off Zia. Her little hands cradled the gift, a painted wooden box, the one she'd made herself. "For Grandma," she'd said, her voice full of hope. But Helen Foster didn't even glance at her gift. She dropped it aside, casual, as if it meant nothing. The laughter, the toasts, the clinking glasses, it was all a blur. I couldn't hear any of it. My heart ached as I watched my daughter, her smile barely there, swallowed by Helen Foster's indifference. Was this what we were really doing? Just pretending like nothing happened? Later, I couldn't hold it in. I grabbed Travis in the kitchen, my voice barely above a whisper. "You need to say something," I urged. "She called your daughter Travis's girl, like she's a guest here." He didn't answer right away. Then, finally, he spoke. "I told her to give Helen Foster the box if this ever happened again." I stared at him. "You're serious?" He nodded. "She remembers." And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just another silent, brushed-off moment. This wasn't something we could ignore. Zia was no longer invisible. She wasn't going to let herself be forgotten anymore. On the way home, the silence in the car was heavy, broken only by Zia's quiet voice. "Is Grandma mad at me?" she asked, her little face so vulnerable. I reached for her hand, but Travis spoke first. "No, sweetheart. Grandma just forgot something important." Zia nodded, her tiny hands holding the box Travis had given her months ago, the same red wrapping paper. "Then I want to give it to her tomorrow." That's when I knew. Something had changed. My daughter was done being overlooked. She was ready to make her voice heard. At home, she clutched the candle in one hand and the small wrapped box in the other, like fragile memories. Both of them would soon demand to be seen. The room falls into a heavy silence, the kind that feels thicker than rain on a quiet street. Samantha Carter clutches a small wrapped object, her tiny fingers trembling just slightly. Her face is calm, composed, but beneath that innocence lies a fierce determination. She's holding something far bigger than a gift, a silent promise to herself. I ask if she's ready for bed, if she wants a bath, or to watch a movie. She shakes her head quietly. "No," she says softly. "I just want to be ready for tomorrow." I pause, my stomach tight. "What's tomorrow?" She looks at me like I should already know. Then she whispers, "Brunch at Grandma's." My chest tightens, not from fear, but because of her unwavering certainty. In that moment, the air shifts. This isn't just a quiet girl afraid to speak. No, this is a child who's finally seen enough, who's decided her voice matters. She's decided to stand tall, to show that her presence isn't an accident. Travis enters the room, mid-brush, and she looks up at him, eyes shimmering with resolve. "Can I still give it to her?" she asks. Her voice is steady, almost older than her years. Travis nods gently, voice soft but firm. "That's your decision, Za. I told you that from the start." Her lips curl, not with her usual joy, but something smaller, sharper, focused, like she shoulders the weight of what's coming. She understands its meaning. Later, in the quiet of the night, I finally ask Travis what's inside that little box. He stares out the window, voice heavy with fatigue. "A few months ago, I was watching her play with Maddie during Jonah's birthday party. They were laughing, kids being kids. Helen Foster called everyone back inside for cake, like she had a plan. Maddie and Jonah got big slices, extra frosting, sprinkles." His voice pauses, resigned. Zia got the end piece. No decor, no candle, nothing. She looked so small, so invisible. His words hang in the air. I remember that day, how it slipped by unnoticed, like a leaf rustling outside. He continues, voice raw. "That night I sat down and wrote her a letter. I printed the adoption papers again. I put everything in that box. Told her she could give it to my mom if she ever felt left out again." My heart clenches. "You never told me," I whisper, feeling a twist of hurt. Travis sighs, eyes tired. "I didn't want to cause a fight. I just wanted her to have something to hold on to. Now I see it, what she's about to do. She's not just giving a gift. She's claiming her space. A small act of defiance, of hope, that echoes loudly. Tomorrow, she'll take that box, that fragile piece of her heart, to Grandma's brunch. And the question lingers. Will she be seen? Will her voice finally be heard? As she sleeps, clutching her little prize, I wonder, what will happen when she finally faces the truth? The air in the room grew heavy, like everyone knew something was about to change. Za's tiny hands gripped the red box as if it held the secret to her future. Her eyes darted between her mom and the silent crowd, uncertainty flickering in her gaze. Helen Foster's cold stare met mine, her lips curling into a smile that felt fake, forced. Every breath seemed to thickening the tension, like the silence itself was waiting to explode. Was this the moment she finally stands up for herself? Or would everything crumble in an instant? The little girl's hope filled the space, fragile but fierce. She's about to make a move that could shatter the quiet, challenging years of quiet exclusion. What's really hiding inside that box? And what will happen once it's revealed? The room holds its breath as she steps forward, facing the unspoken truth. The countdown begins. Everyone's eyes were glued to the scene unfolding. Travis's sister wore a puzzled expression while Maddie stared, wide-eyed. Jonah, blissfully unaware, continued munching on a cookie, oblivious to the tension thickening the air. Helen Foster, with her usual air of control, unwrapped the red paper slowly, as if putting on a show for the audience. But the moment she lifted the lid, her smile vanished. Inside lay a photo in a pristine white frame. It captured a moment of pure joy. Travis in a hospital chair, cradling Zia on her 2nd birthday. Cake smeared across her cheeks, she clung to him, her tiny arms wrapped around his neck. It was a snapshot from her adoption celebration, a moment frozen in time. The caption, written in elegant gold, read, "Day 1, Dad." Beneath the photo, a sealed envelope awaited. Helen Foster's expression shifted, her mouth tightening as she reached for the envelope with trembling hands. She pulled out the first document, a copy of Zia's adoption papers, legal and official, with Travis's name boldly printed as her father. The court seal glimmered at the bottom. Helen Foster blinked hard, as if willing the words to change, but they remained the same. Next, she unfolded a letter, the familiar handwriting unmistakable. Travis didn't flinch as she began to read, but I felt his grip tighten around my fingers beneath the table. Helen Foster's lips moved silently, her face falling with each word. "Mom, if you're reading this, it means you have hurt my daughter again. Not just mine by love, but mine by law, by promise, and by choice. I have spent years watching you treat Zia like an outsider. I hoped it would change. I hoped you would open your heart the way I did. But if she ever had to hand you this box, it means she saw what I saw. That you don't consider her real. Zia is my child. She is your granddaughter. And if you cannot love her equally, then you don't love me. I will not allow her to grow up thinking she has to earn a place in this family. She already belongs. She always has. If you cannot accept that, you will no longer be welcome in our home or in our lives. Travis." The room fell silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Would Helen Foster finally understand? Would she see Zia for who she truly was? The tension crackled like static, and I could feel the fragile hope radiating from Zia, who stood at the center of it all, clutching her red box. Would this be the moment she finally claimed her place? Or would the years of exclusion continue to haunt them all? The questions lingered, heavy and unresolved as the room held its breath, waiting for the truth to unfold. Samantha Carter could feel the heat of Helen Foster's gaze burning into her, a silent challenge in the air. The silence was broken only by the soft crackling of the fire, its flickering light casting uneasy shadows on the walls. Helen Foster's eyes flashed with fury as she slammed a hand onto the table, the sudden action echoing in the still room. Her voice trembled with anger, but the words cut sharper than a blade. "How dare you?" she hissed, her gaze shifting between Samantha and the letter. "You think you're protected, but the real storm is about to start." The air grew thick with tension as the room held its breath. Was this the moment when everything would finally explode? Samantha's heart raced, each beat louder than the last. Would Helen Foster finally understand the truth? Or would the battle lines only grow deeper? Helen Foster's lips twisted into a cold smile. She leaned back, eyes narrowing in a mix of disbelief and disdain. "You think this letter changes everything?" she sneered, her voice dripping with sarcasm. But before anyone could respond, she stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor like nails on a chalkboard. "How dare you embarrass me like this?" she screamed, her face a mask of rage and disbelief. Travis, who had been silent up until then, stood. His voice, steady and unwavering, cut through the chaos. "We didn't embarrass you," he said. "You did that all by yourself." Helen Foster's finger shot out, pointing directly at Samantha. "This is her doing. She turned you against me, against your own mother." Samantha remained calm, unfazed by Helen Foster's venom. "No," she said simply, her voice soft but firm. "Zia gave you a gift. She gave you the chance to see her for who she really is. You chose not to." For a moment, the room was engulfed in the sound of the fire, crackling like an uncertain heartbeat. Zia, the quiet observer at the center of it all, didn't flinch. She wasn't scared, nor was she confused. She was simply watching the truth unfold. Travis turned to Zia, extending his hand toward her. "Ready to go?" he asked, his voice filled with warmth and assurance. Zia nodded, standing up. The moment was final, irreversible. As they gathered their coats, not a single word was spoken from Helen Foster. No pleas, no attempts at reconciliation. The silence between them was deafening. In the car, Zia buckled her seatbelt, her gaze fixed ahead. She didn't speak at first, the weight of the moment settling in. Then, softly, she broke the silence. "Do you think she read the whole letter?" Zia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Travis met her eyes in the rearview mirror and replied, "Every single word." A small smile tugged at Zia's lips. It wasn't big, nor dramatic, but it was enough. Enough to show that something inside her had shifted. Not because Helen Foster had changed, but because, for the first time, Zia didn't need her to anymore. And just like that, they drove away, leaving behind the house of empty expectations, the perfect centerpieces, and the facade of approval. They never went back to Helen Foster's house after that day. No more forced family gatherings, no more pretending. In the quiet of her room, Samantha Carter sat with her mind racing. The house was quiet, the kind of silence that settles deep, heavy with unspoken words. She glanced at the doorway, noting the faint scent of rain lingering in the air, the rustle of leaves just outside. Suddenly, a faint sound caught her attention. A distant package being delivered, muffled yet distinct. Her heart quickened. Carefully, she slipped from her bed, moving silently toward the mailbox. There, a small worn envelope awaited her, addressed in a handwriting she recognized, Helen Foster's. She hesitated, then opened it slowly. Inside, a handwritten apology and a delicate bracelet for her daughter, a fragile gift of remorse. As she held the bracelet, her fingers trembling slightly, she felt a shift within. Beneath Helen Foster's stern exterior, a flicker of vulnerability emerged, challenging her assumptions about Helen Foster's motives. Could this quiet act be the first crack in the walls that had separated their worlds? In that moment, hope flickered anew. The fragile piece of jewelry symbolized more than a gesture. It revealed a buried kindness, a chance for understanding, a step toward healing the family's fragile, strained bond. We focused on building what was real. People talk about cutting off toxic family like it's a simple choice, a clean break. But it's not. It hurts. Even when it's necessary. Even when you know you're right. What hurts more is watching your child shrink to fit someone else's comfort. I won't let that happen again. I won't ask my daughter to keep accepting less just because someone else refuses to give more. That day at Helen's table wasn't about drama or revenge. It wasn't about making a scene. It was about Samantha taking her space in a room where she had always felt like a guest. It was about her saying, "I belong here," even when someone tried to make her feel otherwise. And it was about us, her parents, finally standing behind her with more than just words. Samantha never talks about the box anymore. She doesn't need to. But I kept it. It's in a drawer in my bedroom, right next to her first baby shoes and the hospital bracelet from the day she was born. I keep it not to remember the pain, but to remember the strength it took to face it. The strength in her voice, the quiet power in her choice. She's only 7, but she taught me something I'll carry forever. Family isn't who makes the biggest show of loving you when people are watching. It's not who shares your last name or your blood type. Family is who shows up when it matters, who protects you when it's hard, who makes you feel safe when the world makes you feel small. Samantha has that now, not because someone gave it to her, but because she claimed it for herself. and in doing that, she gave it to us, too. The air in the room felt thick with tension as Helen's eyes locked onto Rebecca. Her voice trembled, a soft, cutting whisper that only the two of them could hear. "Do you really think you can change everything?" The question lingered, hanging in the space between them like a storm about to break. Outside, the distant hum of Philadelphia faded, leaving only the faint pulse of a heart racing. What would happen if the silence wasn't broken? If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone you're fighting for, or someone you finally stood up to, then take a moment to reflect. Your stories matter here. In the dimly lit living room, Samantha stands tall, her hands shaking, but her resolve is unwavering. Helen's eyes pierce through her, cold and sharp. The room feels like it's holding its breath. Outside, the distant hum of Philadelphia seems miles away as tension thickens the air. But then, something shifts. Samantha, ever the protector, pulls her daughter close. The weight of years of unspoken conflict presses down, but her eyes glow with a fierce hope, a promise. This ends here. The moment stretches, quiet, raw, like the calm before a storm. And in that silence, something profound happens. Samantha begins to reclaim her space, her place in this family. For a moment, Helen falters. Could love really be this simple? Could compassion overcome years of control? The answer unfolds in the softness of a quiet exchange, a glance that speaks more than words could ever convey. It's not just about winning, it's about understanding. Samantha has always belonged. She showed us how. She made her space, and in doing so, gave it back to us all. Family isn't about tradition or dominance. It's about standing together, protecting each other, no matter the cost. This is the moment that changed everything. In a world full of noise, sometimes the smallest voices speak the loudest truth.